I think there's something a lot of people experience, but not a lot of people talk about, at least not like in public with a random stranger. I mean, maybe you talk about it with a buddy, um, but you wake up, you go to work, you pay your bills, maybe you hit the gym. Hopefully, you're hitting the gym, right? Maybe you play some games before bed, and on paper, your life isn't that bad, right? Your bills are getting paid. You're working a job maybe that you don't absolutely hate, but eventually you wake up one day and you just think like, man, I'm getting older and not a lot is changing. I'm not feeling like this purpose thing that people are talking about. Is this really it? And I've experienced this a lot. It's the reason why I'm talking about it, right? And it's hard to put my finger on it. I don't think it's what would be considered depression. Maybe people mislabel it as depression on themselves. People people tell people, maybe I'm just depressed or I've been depressed, but I personally don't think that it is depression, right? Because there are times that I thought that I was depressed, and then I actually did hit some kind of major depressive episode for a reason, something that happened in my life that put me into it, and I felt the intense feelings of being in a depressive episode. And then I realized, oh man, I wasn't depressed. Well, then what was I? Because I certainly wasn't happy. I think maybe it's just this feeling of being lost, and I kind of want to talk about that. What's interesting is people have been trying to figure this out for thousands of years, and obviously I'm not going to figure it out in this video, but philosophers, old time philosophers, Nietzsche, Kafka, all of these people over hundreds of thousands of years, hundreds and thousands of years, have talked about happiness and what it means to be happy. And I think the modern problem that I want to talk about, at least for a little bit, is if you are lucky enough to be born in a first world country or a country that's relatively developed where there's not some kind of hierarchy that tells you because you were born into a certain household or your last name is this, you have to work a certain job or carry on your family business. There's this freedom that we are given. I don't want to say we take it for granted, but when you know nothing other than this freedom, maybe we do take it for granted a little bit. We nowadays, again, having been born in somewhere like the United States or Canada or England or wherever a developed country, you don't inherit a purpose normally. You're given this incredible optionality. And although it sounds amazing, you know, it's overwhelming. With unlimited freedom comes an incredible responsibility. Like you are choosing what you are going to be working on, what you are going to be doing for the rest of your life. And they really start you young, right? They incentivize going directly into college, choosing a career path. Like let's say you were good at school in high school. I remember my last few years of high school, I did relatively well, and they, really push you into scholarships. And then once you get a scholarship, there's no break, right? You have summer and then you go straight into school, and you have to go to school. You have to keep going to school to keep your scholarship because, if you get a full ride or you get, you know, a certain amount of money for a scholarship, you can't take a break. You have to go straight into it, which leaves you trying to figure out what you want to do. And maybe you're lucky. Maybe you think you know exactly what you want to do. I thought that I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it changed 3 or 4 times. And I kind of want to talk about that at some point too, that's okay. And I think purpose is malleable and I think it's ever evolving. But anyway, we're given this freedom, right? Some people get stuck in this indecision. People call it analysis paralysis, where they don't know what to choose because choosing in and of itself is a sacrifice. When you decide on something, you are cutting off the other things that you could have chosen as well. There's an opportunity cost to choosing. When you're told what to do, say you were, born in the medieval times and your last name is Smith because entire your entire lineage has been blacksmiths for the last 200 years. And by the time that you have cognition, your dad's already putting a hammer in your hand, and you you know nothing else besides the creation of tools for your village. I'm not going to assume that that is freeing, but it definitely frees you of the decision of what you're going to be doing. Anyway, I think this puts people in a weird spot too, because choosing hard things, choosing to do difficult things is really hard, especially if you're not being mentored by someone, or you weren't brought up in a household that did really difficult things or accomplished big things. There's this very Epicurean way of living that people tend to gravitate towards. They fall back on it whenever they're not going towards something more difficult, right? And it's this way of living of seeking comfort and eliminating problems. I think a lot of us accidentally start optimizing our lives for comfort. And this seeking of comfort, I think, is the opposite of what we need to do to actually create this purpose in our lives. Purpose comes from deciding. I believe that purpose comes from deciding on a goal. And, one day I can have a goal where I feel completely filled with purpose for an entire day or a couple of days. And in that time, I get lost in the thing that I'm doing. Maybe it was a big project in the last job that I had, where I would get completely enveloped by this project that I had to get done. And in that time that I had this micro purpose, I wasn't dwelling on, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right moves for my life? Am I falling behind? And when I'm idle, that's exactly where I go. A lot of the time, if I don't have a big goal, I almost immediately fall back into this. What am I doing with my life? Other people are moving forward. I'm being left behind. I see on social media people my age that are millionaires and they don't have to worry about these things. Well, they probably are worrying about these things, but they're not going to put it in their highlight reel, right? Social media is a completely different conversation. But when we don't have a purpose, a reason to sacrifice things, a reason to better ourselves so that we can hit this goal that we have, even if it's not a goal that we set for ourselves, but something that we have to do out of necessity, we optimize our lives for comfort. And comfort is like this practice of removing problems. When we seek a purpose, it usually involves creating more problems and then makes us have to solve those problems. And then it increases our ability to solve those problems. And then we become more valuable as a person in our own lives and other people's lives. We become a problem solver. If you think about it in terms of like a video game, right? Let's talk about World of Warcraft. I don't know a whole lot about World of Warcraft. I've kind of recently picked it up. The footage that you're watching right now is a level 16 druid playing TBC Anniversary. But anyway, if you think about a game like World of Warcraft, right? It's like a sandbox game. You think about a game like RuneScape, especially RuneScape. There's so many different things that you can do, but if you want to set a goal, like let's say a dungeon, I'm going to be really broad here and not make it too specific about one game, but like let's say that there's a dungeon that you want to get into, or if even before that, let's say like you're level 40 and there's a specific axe that your character can that would be really great for your character, and you need that axe for like 20 more levels, and you just have to do this one dungeon that's going to take all night to do. But even to do that dungeon, it's there's these prerequisites, like you have to be level 40, you have to get there, and then you have to do this line of quests that unlocks the dungeon, and maybe you need gear that is good enough for that dungeon. And so you create this purpose, and then all of a sudden you have a vision, and you can put together a plan. And what was a sandbox game that you could go and fish for 15 hours, or you could go mining, or you could whatever, all of these different options, all of a sudden you have a plan. Today I need to do this quest and I need to get this gear, and maybe by the end of the week I'm able to do this dungeon, and then I'm going to do this dungeon this many times a week until hopefully I get the drop that I need, that I want. And all of a sudden you've created, at the end of it all, you've got the axe, and you've got these stories of playing with your friends, and you've spent a couple months going towards this purpose, right? It's the same thing for life. And let's say you get the axe, and maybe you're playing a warrior, and then you realize that level 40 to 60, what that looks like as a warrior, maybe you don't want to do that anymore. Maybe you want to be a druid. Maybe you like the idea of bear form, right? And then, oh, but maybe I'll just stick with the warrior because I've spent so much time, put so much time into it. That's something that people call the sunk cost fallacy, this inability to change or pivot because we believe that we've spent so much time into something. So we just sit there and we become miserable in what we have instead of seeking something better. I think that the pivoting and the switching and the changing of our minds is something that is built into our DNA. It makes us this Renaissance man or this Renaissance woman that, I'm almost 30 years old now, and I've done 5 or 6 different things. And I really thought I was going to be the person that planned my entire life out and had everything figured out. And I was going to get this degree, and I got this bachelor's degree, and I was going to work this job, and then X amount of years, and I would be in C-suite, and I would make all of that money that everyone was talking about was going to change my life. And that's why we go to college, right? And that's not how it happened. And I had a lot of issues in my pivoting where I thought I had self-worth issues, and I saw people in their roles and the what I thought was happiness, what it looked like, right? On the outside, this amount of money that they had, and maybe they had a boat that they would take their family out on and all of this. But I realized that those things were just medications for the life that was unfulfilled in the role that they were in. And then they developed these golden handcuffs. So I'm kind of rambling, but that's also what these videos are mostly going to be. It's just me getting all of these thoughts out of my head. Anyway, I think that purpose is not something that we were given. And, we could have been given it, but I don't think it's something that comes from a divine power. Like we're instilled with this purpose and we have to figure it out. We've got to figure out what our purpose is. I think sometimes it's given to us out of necessity, some big mountain that we have to climb, or family issues that we have to overcome. The purpose comes from this struggle, and whenever we're not given one, they talk about the people who the lottery completely destroys their lives. They win the lottery and they make hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they end up on drugs and spending it all and losing it. And I think there's a lot to say about that, where I think that purpose comes from these challenges that we're given. And at least in my own life, I see that when I don't have a challenge, I probably should identify one pretty quickly to go after, because I will start contemplating my existence, which is not a happy place for me to be. Nietzsche talks about how suffering in and of itself is not the enemy. Meaningless suffering is. If your suffering serves something, if it serves a purpose, like if you are raising kids, I mean, that's got to be incredibly hard, right? I don't have kids, but maintaining a marriage, maybe having to share custody with somebody to raise kids, all of the different things that you're trying to instill in them, it's not something, if you viewed it through a certain lens, you could see that as a big negative drain on your life, but it serves a purpose. You're creating these wonderful human beings that are going to carry on your legacy and have wonderful lives of their own. When you're building something, building a house probably sucks, but you're building shelter for somebody or yourself. Like, suffering without meaning can be where we get stuck and depressed, but having some kind of meaning can make it all worthwhile. And we're talking about things that we create ourselves. We decide these things. It doesn't come from someone else, or it doesn't have to come from a higher power. Viktor Frankl wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, where he found purpose in his suffering in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. As long as we can identify hope, reason for the suffering that we're dealing with, it becomes bearable. Anyway, I've probably rambled enough about all of this, but I'm going to keep rambling in future videos. You know, I guess to bring this thought to a close, maybe the reason so many adults feel lost isn't because they've failed. I think failure in the way that we think about it is almost completely impossible. I mean, actual failure is, in my mind, is just death. We can always get back up in one way or another, but maybe it's not because people are failing, but maybe it's because nobody was ever taught that meaning isn't something waiting to be found. We create it. And sometimes it's minute by minute, day by day, we create that purpose. It's something that we slowly build through the way that we choose to live. Look, I know this video is kind of all over the place. Honestly, this YouTube channel is going to be almost like a journal. I used to talk to several different people about things like this. I've kind of lost touch with these people for one reason or another. If you like this kind of thing, you can subscribe. If you don't, I'm sorry I wasted your time, but have a great day anyway.